Hi, and welcome to another edition of Talkin Sports. I'm Charlie DeBiase, sports reporter for the Staten Island Advance. This week's topic is the Memorial Day race, and we are joined by longtime Advance sports writer Jack Minogue. Jack, thanks for joining the program.
My pleasure, Charlie.
The Memorial Day race has become a tradition on Staten Island. Jack, it's the 27th year. It started in 1981, and it's something that a lot of people have come to like. Would you agree with that?
I think one of the great things about this is that it's become traditional, even though we've been forced to move the site from Newdorp and Richmond Town, where we couldn't secure the course any longer, where the Ronaldson Run is up by Susan Wagner to the South Shore, and then finally here to South Beach. And while I was opposed to moving it here, I didn't think it was practical. It's really turned out to be a very nice site.
It's more than just a race. I mean, there are so many other things going on here. The average person that comes down to observe what's going on is going to be in for a treat.
I think some people were surprised at how nice the site is, and plus this really turned out to be a perfect course to start off the season because it's a relatively flat course, and as the season goes on, the next two races in the Triple Crown are much more difficult. Ronaldson has a very steep hill coming back up, and Pepper Martin at 5 miles is really a test, especially in July.
Now, Jack, there have been, over the 27-year history of the race, there have been several individuals, both men and women, who have made a name for themselves association with the Memorial Day run.
Well, on the men's side, Frank McConville was the dominant figure for a number of years. And then we had a young man came in from Brooklyn by the name of Alem Kassé, who dominated the race for about 6 or 7 years. He didn't win all of them, but he was a major figure. In the new millennium, on the men's side, we have only one repeat winner. With the women, we've had a number of them who have dominated this race. Carrie Prophet stands out because she went about 10 years between wins, but then we have Janine Radice dominated the race for a number of years, and Ann Vasquez. We had a young lady by the name of Brianna Jackowitz who won this race when she was 12 and again when she was 13.
Well, that's the unique thing about the race, is that pretty much something new happens every year. And speaking of which, last year, the 2007 race, Jack, I think you'll agree that might have been one of the most exciting races in the 27-year history. A couple of Monsignor Farrell products, Jeff Carbonella and Dan Lewis, were leading for good portions of the race. And then who turned out to be now a two-time winner, David Dorsey, came from behind and eventually won. How exciting was that last year, John?
Well, I think that was probably the best finish in the 27 years we've had the race. Anthony Mio, who was also up there with the leaders, was running in 4th place at the time, and I remember talking to him afterwards. He was running with Dorsey, and when Dorsey took off, he told me, he said he didn't think he had any kind of a chance of catching the other two guys.
Right.
So it was really, I think, the best or most surprising finish in the history of the race.
This year's race, I know that sometimes you find out only an hour or so before the race some of the entrants that come down the last second. Who are the favorites this year to win the race?
Obviously, if Dorsey's back, he would have to be considered. So would Carbonella and Lewis. And I remember last year, after the race, Dorsey telling me how happy he was to see John and Mike Cassidy standing and watching the race on Capodanno Boulevard. So they would have to figure in there. On the women's side, Laura Radigan, certainly she would figure in there. Kim Leathers would be another one. I remember a lead on one of my stories 4 or 5 years ago, which was, will the mystery runners please stand up? Because almost every one of the winners in this millennium was not signed up before race day.
The Memorial Day race, as we said, is a tradition. It's a great way to kick off the summer. And even for those who don't competing in the race portion, or the running portion rather, or the walk portion. Families come down, they have a good time, they cheer on the runners on the side, and afterwards, people get a hot dog, they get a drink, and it's just a great atmosphere, and it's a terrific way to kick off the summer. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Talkin Sports. Jack, I'd like to thank you for joining the program.
My pleasure, Charlie.
From the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Boardwalk in South Beach, I'm Charlie DeBiase. And remember, for all the sports results, please log on to www.silive.com.